We had always been close friends. After graduating from school, we decided to rent an apartment in a new neighborhood, and everything seemed perfect. New houses, green streets, and plenty of places to hang out. The only downside was the lack of neighbors to socialize with, but soon a new neighbor moved in next door. At first, his name was Alex. He was polite, always greeted us with a smile, but there was something in his gaze that unsettled me. I couldn't pinpoint what it was. He seemed too detached, as if he was always watching us but never became part of our lives. One day when I got home from work, I saw Alex putting something that looked like a large bag into the trunk of his car. Of course, I had no idea what it was, but I couldn't shake the feeling that it was something strange. We often gathered in the evenings, and I decided to tell my friends about my suspicions. They laughed it off, saying I was just being paranoid. I couldn't fully disagree with them, but I still wanted to stay alert. A few weeks later, one evening, our friend Misha went missing. He just didn't return from a party we were all supposed to attend. We started to worry, calling him repeatedly, but his phone was off. All of us exchanged worried glances, and fear gradually took hold. We decided to go to Alex since his house was the closest to where Misha had disappeared. Alex opened the door with a smile when we knocked. "Hey guys, what's up?" His voice sounded too cheerful. We asked if he had seen Misha. He paused for a moment and then said, "No, I haven't seen him. But if he's missing, maybe it's time to call the police." I felt a chill run down my spine. Why was he so calm? There was not a hint of concern on his face. We returned to our apartment and decided to call the police. But days passed and there was still no news about Misha. On the third day after his disappearance, I couldn't help but go back to Alex. I got closer to his house and noticed that the windows were shut tight. But in one of them, in the dim light, I saw Alex standing there. He was looking directly at me. I tried to shake it off, but his gaze pierced right through me. I went back home and told my friends what I had seen. This time, they were no longer laughing. We began to discuss what to do next. It became clear that Alex needed to be suspected. We decided to keep an eye on him. The next day, I saw him carrying something out of his house and then loading it into his car. I called my friends over and we decided to follow him. Alex drove towards the forest. We tried to keep our distance, but soon he stopped on the side of the road. He got out of the car and, grabbing that same bag, headed into the woods. We exchanged glances and started following him. My heart raced with fear and adrenaline. Alex went deeper into the woods and soon we stopped. He had gone too far to see him clearly, but we could hear strange noises. Rustling, maybe something heavy falling to the ground. I felt a cold sweat break out on my forehead. We exchanged worried looks, but no one wanted to turn back. We decided to approach closer. I took a step and suddenly there was a loud crack of a twig. Alex turned around sharply and we froze. "What was that?" someone whispered. We quickly jumped back and stumbled into some bushes. Hiding, we watched as he began to dig a hole. It dawned on us. He could really be a killer. We decided it was time to call the police. I pulled out my phone and began to dial. But at that moment, I saw Alex suddenly stop and look around. His eyes met mine. I froze, not knowing what to do. He looked as if he knew we were there. "What do you need, guys?" His voice echoed from behind the trees. We realized he was coming toward us. We turned and ran, not looking back. I could hear him shouting after us, but I couldn't think of anything except getting to safety. When we got back to the apartment, we were in a panic. We decided we had to tell the police what we had found out. They, of course, wouldn't believe us without evidence. We started brainstorming how we could prove our suspicions. Eventually, we decided to keep watch over his house. The night passed in tension. We sat by the window, watching his house. From time to time, we saw him pacing back and forth, but nothing suspicious happened. We began to think maybe it was all just our imagination. The next morning when I woke up, I was overwhelmed with an unbearable sense of dread. We decided to check his house again. At that moment, someone knocked on the door. It was the police. They said they had received an anonymous tip about a missing person and were there to ask questions. I couldn't believe my ears. They were about to talk to Alex. When they approached him, he seemed shocked, but didn't resist. The police asked him a few questions, but he responded as if he had nothing to do with Misha's disappearance. When they left, we realized that if we didn't get any evidence, nothing would change. We decided to approach him again. This time, when we entered his yard, I noticed a small shed at the back of the house. I couldn't help but move closer. The door was slightly ajar. I peered inside and froze. It was dark inside, but I saw shapes. I couldn't believe my eyes. These were Misha's belongings. His jacket, shoes, even his backpack. I couldn't believe I was standing in front of something so horrific. A cold chill ran down my spine, and I closed the door. I returned to my friends and we discussed what we had seen. We understood it was time to do something. Otherwise, we could end up in danger ourselves. We called the police again and told them what we had found. This time, they took our information seriously and decided to conduct a search. Soon, they returned with us to Alex's house. They knocked on his door, and when he opened it, they asked for permission to search. Alex was clearly shocked, but didn't resist. We stood outside waiting for results. It was a moment filled with anxiety. After a few minutes, one of the officers came out and said they found several suspicious items in the shed. Alex was taken into custody. I felt a weight lift off my shoulders. We had finally done what we needed to do, but I still couldn't shake off the unease. How could we have missed this before? A few days later, I saw news headlines on the street. Neighbor arrested on suspicion of serial murder. A heavy shadow settled in my mind. I often thought about how easily we could have become his next victims. After Alex's arrest, we returned to our usual lives, but his absence left a scar on our consciousness. We couldn't forget that the person who lived next door had hidden such a terrible secret. Every evening when I stepped outside, I felt out of place. My paranoia wouldn't leave me, and now I looked at neighbors with suspicion. I don't know what happened to Alex. Rumor had it that his case lingered in court for a long time. I just hope we never face anything like that again. And if I could give one piece of advice, never ignore your instincts. Sometimes they can save your life.